Family and fellow soldiers, I'm the Professor, and this is the Moment of Truth. And now the Friday Crime Report. Back in November of last year, Shawnee Mission East High School in Prairie Village, Kansas made national headlines after a white student, Nicholas Rosalie, brutally beat a black female classmate while screaming the N-word at her, and his savage assault was so vicious she had to be hospitalized. Not much has been done about this case in the last 7 months, but recently there has been a development. This thug has pleaded guilty to a felony count of aggravated battery causing great bodily harm. Of course, it remains to be seen what kind of sentence the judge is going to hand down, but if white privilege is any indication, for rapists like Brock Turner and Drew Clinton, I think that the judge is going to say, well, we don't want to ruin this little racist life. Not trying to rain on anyone's parade, but we got to be honest about the fact that it's these judges who have turned out to be some of the most problematic adherents of white supremacy. They hand down what amount to acquittals after the fact from the bench. That's their standard operating procedure, and we're kidding no one but ourselves if we don't think that that's actually in the cards, because it usually is. Now, all of this started when the young lady who was attacked had confronted another classmate about calling black students slaves. So this is not something limited just to the criminal who carried out this assault. It's a school-wide problem there. But it's one that couldn't exist without the school actively and deliberately protecting these perpetrators. Now in this case, this thug, Nicholas Rosalie, decided to involve himself in something that absolutely had nothing to do with him whatsoever. He was beating a girl, and she was attempting to defend herself against somebody who was much larger and stronger than she was. And reports are that this isn't the first time that this creep has done something like this. And when I say the school administrators were allowing him to engage in this violent behavior, I mean that literally. Because this Nicholas Rosalie had also been involved in another violent incident just a few months earlier. So this guy's been doing stuff like this all along, just like we see with Kyle Rittenhouse and others. These criminals are allowed to remain on the loose committing their crimes. It's not that the authorities don't know. It's not that the authorities can't do anything about it. It's that they're doing exactly what these racist people in the society want. The dominant society considers trash like this to be their little attack dogs. And since they're the ones who allowed this guy to remain in school after all of this behavior, they didn't even expel him from what I've been able to find out. That being the case, the school district ought to be sued 5 ways from Sunday. His presence there is their fault. They continue to let him stay there, so they should be responsible for whatever he does. Understand, this is Generation Z we're talking about here, not baby boomers, not Gen Xers, not even millennials. This is the post-Obama generation, and look what a number of racist families have been teaching their children. So while black families have spent the last 60 years teaching black children about being colorblind and racial harmony and treating people with respect, we see what the suburbanites have been teaching their children. And they're the very ones who will deny it and lie through their crooked teeth and claim some gibberish about Dr. King and content of your character. Well, we see the content of the character of people like this reprobate. He didn't just spring up out of the ground. He's a product of an environment that teaches that this is how he's supposed to act. He's also the product of an environment that protects hate criminals like himself. Trash like this don't operate in a vacuum. If there were actually consequences consistently meted out for this kind of behavior, he wouldn't have dared commit the crime that he had. But it's precisely because he's been taught that rules don't apply to him, especially when he attacks a black person. He's been taught that he has genetic immunity from the law. And he has the open approbation and support of all of the political and social authorities around him. That's why he felt fully confident that he could commit a brutal assault and get away with it. Because when you look at the total lack of reaction from the school officials, you see that he was right. The school responded to this violent assault by suspending the girl who got beaten. Yeah, the girl who he attacked, they decided to suspend her. Even though she was the one who was attacked, she was the one who was injured. They were taking his side. Because they wanted to send the message that black students are not allowed to defend themselves when attacked by a non-black person. And we see this across the board throughout the society. Whenever black people are attacked, whether it be boat workers in Alabama or whether it be flight attendants for Frontier, if a white person attacks a black person, the authorities might put charges on the attacker. But they will definitely put charges on the black victim, or the employer will suspend or fire the black person for defending themselves. The father of this race terrorist was claiming that this attack wasn't racial at all, so clearly he's a Fox News viewer, but his lies weren't going to get his little reprobate off the hook. Now, the mother of the child in this case wasn't talking about forgiveness, and that's a welcome change. In fact, she was saying the opposite. There's consequences for every action. We teach all of our kids that, and they need to teach him that, talking about the thug's parents. Now he's learning it, but he's learning it the hard way. So when black people stop that forgive crap and stop trying to get a pat on the head from the dominant society, we start seeing different outcomes. And for the slow folks, that's not to say that simply not being a clown and forgiving these racial terrorists is all it takes to get justice. But if you don't act like you're uncompromising on seeing these hate criminals being punished, that makes it a lot easier for these racist governmental figures to let them go too. We'll continue with the moment of truth in just a moment, but first, a word from the official sponsor of Black Empowerment, Power Tools. There's no telling when something's going to come up, so make sure you carry your power tools at all times. You never know when you're going to need to bring the hammer down, or when you'll have some trash that needs to be blown away, or some obstacle that requires cutting down. Don't get caught empty-handed. Keep your hammer close by. Keep that leaf blower at the ready, and always carry your steel. Power Tools. Because no matter what your day job or side hustle may be, there's no excuse for not being ready to put in some work. The only reason that this thug was arrested and even charged was because of the intense public pressure that was put on the authorities. They were determined not to do anything at all. As far as they were concerned, well, this is a school matter. Let the school decide what should be done, which they knew was supposed to be burying the case. But when public pressure wouldn't go away, they were forced to have to arrest this punk and put some sort of charges on him. They had wanted to dismiss the case, or at the very least, they wanted the charges to be no more than a misdemeanor. This way it wouldn't follow him. By pleading to a felony, though, this thug's got something on his record that's going to follow him for the rest of his worthless life, as it should. White privilege allowed him to engage in behavior like this, and it's not just limited to his school district. You see, this is the Christopher Rufo effect. This is why racists like him push hysteria about CRT and other things. It's meant to encourage racists to carry out violence because they know they have the support of people in government. It's meant to give them some sort of flimsy pretense for it. You know that they want to go ahead and be violent towards black people, but you got to let them know, hey, we're encouraging it. You should do it, and this is the reason why. Why you know you're not really being put upon, but just tell yourself that you are. That's the reason why Rufo and Ron DeSantis have been pushing their anti-black hysteria, specifically for the purpose of encouraging and promoting anti-black violence. That's the entire point of doing it. And it's not just these racist teenagers who carry out acts of violence. Recently, there was another racial assault that took place, this time in Wisconsin, where a white man named Matthew Eddy rushed the stage at his daughter's high school graduation and attacked the black school superintendent because, as this Eddy character put it, he didn't want his daughter shaking the superintendent's hand. Now, there were police on the scene at that high school graduation, and yet this Eddy character wasn't arrested. And he hasn't even been charged as of this recording, so the police are protecting him. For all we know, the thugs in blue put him up to it. Now, the high school whose graduation was marred by this incident is Baraboo High School. And this isn't the first time that school's made headlines for white supremacist behavior. In 2018, 50 male students took a group photo of themselves giving a Nazi salute. This is what's going on at that one school, and when the school superintendent is physically assaulted and the local authorities do nothing about it, and the school district themselves simply issue a tepid statement saying that teachers and faculty and students should be safe wherever they are on campus, that's how you know they're all in on it. It would be impossible for these racists to operate without the active participation and cover given to them by the authorities. Now, one thing I'd like to know is, when are we going to have any stories about parents pulling their children out of the school because of racist, violent, white supremacist thugs like this Nicholas What's-His-Name? White conservatives love to push the line that parents, meaning white parents, are withdrawing their white children from schools because of black children misbehaving. Well, this young lady had to leave that school because of a white student who savagely beat her in the hallway in the middle of class. But of course, as we all know, these are racial narratives, and they're meant to forward the demonization of black people. So, when you have white people who go to school boards and scream at the school officials and threaten their lives, these little teenage and preteen racists that they're raising understand that that's what these suburban supremacists are teaching them. When you have teenagers who are acting out white supremacist behavior, you understand that this isn't happening in spite of their parents, it's happening because of them. But at least in this case, this degenerate can now begin his career as a lifelong criminal. He's been committing crimes up until now, and now we can go ahead and make it official. It still remains to be seen if the judge will attempt to subvert justice or not by giving him some lowball sentence or just saying let the guy go with a slap on the wrist. But either way, Black students and their parents need to be on alert for these race attacks, and they need to be prepared to defend themselves. As we saw in Wisconsin, even the teachers and the school administrators are not safe if they're Black. These white supremacists have the mental calculus that they can go ahead and pull these attacks and nothing's going to be done against them because Black people will simply sit there and wait to see what the thugs in blue are going to do, or if the DA is going to do anything about it. What's going to change that calculus is if Black people show that they are not easy targets. That's one lesson that these white supremacists definitely need to learn. And that's this week's Friday Crime Report. Keep your eyes open and stay on alert, because there's a lot worse criminals out there than the ones the white corporate media chooses to show you. Good day, and be one. I'd like to take a moment to mention some of our contributors. Brenda McPherson, Sabrina, Alice Ransom, Zachary Jenkins, and Samuel Divers. Salute to them and thank you to everyone for listening, liking, and sharing this message. Black empowerment only exists because of you.